Hello there, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Emma, and I do apologize for the gaps between these sewing diary videos. I recently took a detour and learned how to crochet, Exhibit A. So that's kind of where my time has gone. Thank you guys for being so patient, but I am now back with sewing. This week I attempted to make 2 vests. Both are patterns I got from Dressmaking Amore. One is a beginner level vest and one is ambitious beginner level, which is something I'd happily associate myself with. Without further ado, let's get into it. I bought the pattern, printed it out before I realized that I had printed it at about 96% instead of 100%. It wasn't too big of a problem because I could just adjust my seam allowances to accommodate for the little shift in size, but for next time I'll be sure to check my sizing at the print shop. I did my test run on some calico fabric just so that I had absolute freedom to learn and not be scared of making mistakes on my real fabric. This time around, I also wanted to cut fabric without having to pin every single piece down. So here's me trying a couple different household items as fabric weights. Turns out the best of the bunch are these sweet corn kernel tins. They're nice and sturdy, they can stay where you need them to stay, they can move when you need them to move. Overall, 10 out of 10 would recommend. I decided to use a spare piece of fabric from my previous dress pants project, and this one was a little bit more slippery than the calico, so I still had to pin down some curves to cut out the pattern. If you've watched some sewing tutorials, you've probably heard of this thing called a tailor's ham, which is this curved ball that helps you shape curved edges like this princess seam. But because I didn't have one, I decided to use the curved edge of my ironing board, which worked just as well. Overall, I'd say this pattern is pretty straightforward. It's just one layer of fabric with some interfacing here and there to help the fabric keep its shape. This raw edge by the armhole is where you're going to have to use bias binding to close things up. Before, I thought that bias binding was just a strip of long fabric that you can cut horizontally like this, but that is not the case because as you can see, the fabric is very stiff horizontally. But if you pull it diagonally or on the bias, hence the name bias binding, you will find that there is a lot of stretch, which works great to fit along the curved edge of your armhole. The process is surprisingly simple, and I'll have the video tutorial I used down in the description below. Essentially, all you do is cut out a square, cut it down the diagonal, and then sew that edge together. Once you have this rhombus looking shape, you can mark out the width of your bias binding, line it up so that all the lines are parallel, but making sure to stagger the ends a little bit so you have the little pieces peeking out. Sew that diagonal together. And once you cut it out, you should have one continuous piece of stretchy bias binding. This then goes over your armhole, hides all the edges nicely, and voila! Now that we've finished the first vest, it is now time to level up and attempt the ambitious beginner vest. I also cut this one up first on calico before I realized that I had cut both the lining and the main fabric on the same piece of fabric. This was because I had decided not to watch the video tutorial. In this case, it was fine because I was using calico, it's scrap fabric anyways, but had I cut it straight onto my main fabric, I would have wasted a couple of pieces. Anyways, I made sure to mark out the lining pieces and the main body pieces so that I would know exactly what to cut on which fabric next time. This prototype version was also pretty smooth sailing. I did skip a couple steps like cutting out all the interfacing or sewing the buttons and buttonholes. I did make a couple mistakes here and there, like with this faux welt pocket, I sewed some pieces down that were meant to stay up, but I'm happy to make these mistakes and learn from them now as opposed to later on the real fabric. It is dark out. I have finished the trial vest and we have a problem. I love the silhouette, I must say. Looks super cute from the back, but the sizing is too small. As you can see, there's no way I'm gonna be able to fit closures, buttons on the sides of this to close it. So thank God we did it on calico. At first I had decided to use some leftover fabric from the previous dress pants project, but on second thoughts, I felt like the fabric drained all the color out of my face, so I decided to go get new fabric.
Cái này cháu lấy, nó bảo cho mẫu 40 phân thì thôi cháu lấy 50 phân cho nó chắc ăn cũng được.
Thợ may người ta bảo mà.
Vâng. Okay, we got the goods. This is a fabric my mom bought to make some scarves. This is one layer. It's pretty sheer. The second one is very tapestry-like. Like if I wore it as a scarf, you wouldn't see the designs much.
But if we hung it up on a wall, we'd be able to admire it in all its glory.
It's a stretchy knit material, and it's kind of shiny, and I quite enjoy the way it drapes. This next one is of the same material, stretchy knit fabric, kind of shiny, and the lines mean that it is easy to line up and sew. And last but not least, I got this black knit fabric. So this is 2.5 meters that I want to use to make a dress.
This is the lining of the vest. As you can see, it's a very soft, silky and smooth fabric that moves very easily. And here is the main fabric. It's much stiffer, holds shape really well, and also has the shine that looks great under the sun. I also lost about 5 millimeters of the fabric to the washing machine, so I'll be sure to throw it into like a clothes bag next time. Also, did you know that when you download a pattern, depending on what PDF software you're using, you can toggle on or off the different layers that is on the pattern. You can just keep the layer that you need, print it out, and call it a day. But unfortunately, I was not able to figure it out on the software at the print shop, so I still printed all the layers. You guys know the drill: cutting out the pattern, cutting out the fabric, cutting out the interfacing, and then ironing it all together. I was surprised to find that most of the pieces for the main fabric were interfaced, but then I realized that the interfacing really helped to keep the fabric edges together instead of fraying like this one, and made it a lot easier to work with overall. This was also the first time that I used a fabric marking pen that uses thermochromic ink. What that means is at room temperature, the ink will show up as blue or red, like here, but when you expose the ink to higher temperatures, like with an iron, the ink becomes translucent. In other words, the ink is still there on your garment, it's just now become see-through. So with that logic, if you ever find yourself in a really cold environment, like if you're walking through an igloo or something, and the temperature drops, your ink should show back up again. An issue I did find was that even after ironing the ink away, sometimes it still leaves ghost marks, which aren't too visible, but I feel like maybe with this fabric, because it's more on the shiny side, it's much more visible to me, at least, up close. I did try to wash it away with some warm water, which helped a little bit, but did not get rid of the ink entirely. I'd say using this ink pen makes marking much more precise than using chalk, but chalk does wash away pretty easily. I guess one of the points that makes this vest more difficult than the other vest is the fact that this uses lining, which is basically a second layer of fabric beneath the main fabric. There are multiple reasons why you might want to have lining. One, maybe you're working with a sheer outer fabric and you need something more opaque underneath in the form of lining or a slip dress. Sometimes it can be used to provide warmth, so an extra layer of insulation, or even to make the garment waterproof. Think outdoors hiking gear. Because you have a second layer of fabric, this reduces the wear and tear that you would make from the friction against your body on the outer fabric, which would prolong the lifespan of your garment. If you're creating more formal wear, I guess, The lining makes it look kind of more luxurious, and also on the functional side of things, it is usually a softer, smoother fabric than your outer layer, which makes it much easier to slip on and slip off. So imagine if you had a vest, a full sleeve vest, without the soft lining inside. It would be kind of a hassle to get inside and get out of it. When you have more complicated garments that have a lot of construction, interfacing, a lot of seams, a lot of raw edges that you want to hide, you can use lining so that you don't have to serge all of the edges. So if you imagine in math, you're always told to show your work, it's basically the opposite in sewing, where you try your best to hide all of your work. I find working with the lining fabric to be a little bit more finicky because it's more slippery, it frays a lot more easily, but if I take my time with it, then it's still pretty manageable. Or maybe that's just because I'm working with a very small amount of lining here. And it would be a whole different story if I were to make a lining for a full-length graduation gown or something. You gotta be a little bit more mindful with the thread tension that you're using, or tugging on the fabric when you're pulling it out of the machine. It's just a little bit more delicate than your other fabrics, so you just gotta handle it with a little bit more TLC.
Hello, I just took a shower break. It is about 8:30. I will try to finish this project tonight, so I'll leave it somewhere on the screen that you guys can see and follow along. It is not sewn together. The princess seams, the faux welt pocket, all that good stuff. Will it fit is the real question. Yeah, I think it will fit this time. I did size up a little bit. This is the lining, and all of this will go inside this. Guardians of the clock. So the reason I don't have a steam iron is because I still have the habit of securing interfacing on the wrong side, which means that instead of gluing the interfacing onto the fabric, I glue the interfacing onto the iron, and it's a bigger pain in the butt to clean a steam iron when you have glue on it. So that's why I still use this dry iron, because I still make my rookie mistakes. Okay, so I think you can see more clearly now how one side has a more pointed edge. This side is more curved. This side is going to have the buttonholes. This side is going to have the buttons. It'll be looking like this anyways. It does bother me enough. Yeah, I'm gonna redo this part.
A few moments later.
I'm only one step done, or one step closer, and my hair is almost dry now. That's how long that took. What do we think? Objectively, I don't think it looks that different. But I guess I'm kind of happy that I tried to fix it at least. But does that make that a smart decision or a dumb decision? I had messed up a step from earlier. Like I was supposed to do like a quick turn like this, but I did a swerve for that.
A few moments later.
So yeah, I sewed the two front flaps together. Hey-oo. That's the back. I was supposed to close the sides, but instead I closed the front. So maybe it's getting kind of late. Maybe that's why. Okay, this is the final glimpse of the inside of this vest. This is an inner vest tour. I finished sewing the side seams correctly this time. I still have to do the hem and the buttons. That's gonna be a tomorrow problem because Buttonholes are kind of finicky, and I don't think my cognitive function is at its peak right now, to say the least. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good morning, party people. It is the next day. It's about 9 a.m. now, and I'm gonna go grab lunch with my friend later. So let's see if we can finish this in 2 hours. Scene. Everything's gonna come out this way. This is kind of like magic to me. Whoever came up with this method and was able to engineer it out in their head, create it into a formula, an approach where they can teach it to someone else is beyond me. Ta-da! This is my button foot holder. Button foot. This is the button holder. And it will help me make perfect buttonholes for this button. I'm gonna switch out. I found the setting to make buttons on this Brother machine on YouTube actually. I was not able to figure it out myself, but I will still make a couple buttons on some test fabric just to make sure that I got the right thing going for me. Besides adjusting these dials to make your buttonholes, your machine probably also comes with something that look like this. You can kind of adjust the closeness of the stitches with this back dial here. There's a lever here that you will want to pull down and push back. First, second, third, fourth. I'm happy with this one, so I will now move onto my actual garment. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you for all the tips and encouragement you've left on my other videos. It's been a great year, 2024, learning how to sew, and I'm very excited to see where this all leads. I hope you guys have a happy new year with good food, good company, fulfilling experiences, and I'll see you in 2025. Bye!